Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to review the latest episode of WandaVision, entitled On a Very Special Episode. So this show continues to be awesome. The story is just plowing along, wherein we have this situation where Vision and Wanda are living in a seemingly idyllic setting, which is quirky. And the scenery keeps changing, and the outside world is able to pick up a signal that conveys all of this activity in the form of a TV program, an ever-changing TV program. And everybody's trying to navigate the situation, whether they're inside the bubble or outside the bubble, which is now, by the way, being called the Hex because it's hexagonal in shape. The set this time around was more of an 80s style sitcom set. It was very Family Ties, very Growing Pains. Then they even had a theme song for the fake TV show that was also very Family Ties, very Growing Pains. The lyrics were really cool too because they aligned with the basic story of Wanda and Vision. I thought maybe it would have some clues in it, or that it would sort of be a commentary on the situation, of Wanda controlling everything, but it didn't. It's just really basically like a couple song, but it's still very cool. In the beginning, her children, I guess Billy and Tommy, are infants, and they're being very fussy, and they, I guess, won't go to sleep, and Wanda's trying to make them go to sleep, and she tries to magic them to sleep, and it doesn't work. And I thought that was interesting. They don't respond to her magic, at least not in that way. So I thought that was interesting because it could come up later. The neighbor Agnes comes in, and she's being her usual like flippity flitty loud kind of self, the usual wacky neighbor self that she is, and she offers to pick up the children and try to get them to go to sleep. Vision sort of doesn't like that idea, so there's a little bit of a hiccup, and she actually breaks character and tells Wanda, I can do that again. Do you want me to do it again? Do you want me to act out that scenario again? And reveals to us as the audience that, okay, on some level, some of these people are aware that they are play acting to go along with what they think Wanda wants. And in this case, she broke character to sort of smooth over what she perceived as a mistake in her quote unquote performance. So that was very cool. And when she does this, Wanda is confused, or at least seems to be confused, or plays like she's confused. And this goes, towards some stuff I was saying in my video about last week's episode, which was that while Wanda is doing this, and Wanda is the catalyst of it, and the person who's perpetrating it, she's not in complete control. She's not omniscient within it. She is, and if she is, the omniscient part of her is not communicating with the rest of her. There's a part of Wanda that doesn't know what's happening and that she isn't in control of, that is operating independently from the parts of her that are perceiving the immediate activity around herself. And it's weird because she can sort of switch between it, or she does get bumped out of one of those consciousnesses and into the other one. But even then, I don't think she's omniscient as to everything that's going on. It's really kind of weird. There are levels of how much she's aware of, and how much of it she's aware of but pushes down. So it's a very interesting thing. And when it all comes out, just what she's been dealing with this whole time in terms of maintaining the illusion is going to be pretty wild. So next we see the kids grow from infants to 8-year-olds, instantaneously. They were infants, then they're not. And it's like, what the hell? And, again, this is another one of those things that they notice briefly, but then just blow it off. And Vision starts to be like, what is going on? Like, what, what is happening? And he said, why did Agnes say that about about, can we do it again? What is that? And Wanda's like, oh, she didn't, she doesn't mean anything by it, doesn't mean anything. She didn't even notice the kids just automatically aged, which tells us that Wanda did notice it, but she's not concerned with it. She's not letting it sort of deter her from maintaining the illusion that this is her actual family and that it's normal. So it's that, again, that thing where she's in and out. She's aware of it, but she's pretending she's not, but she isn't aware of it. It's so strange. But that's where we are. Then we flash over to Rebecca, who is just, recovering from being hurled out of the hex and back into reality in like a sword, medical tent. And she starts talking about how she couldn't get Wanda out of her head. All she could hear was Wanda in her head when she was in the hex, and that all she could feel was like grief. And I think she also said a sense of pushing down, which, again, I've been saying from the beginning, it's been obvious that this world was created when Wanda's mind kind of fractured or kind of just couldn't handle the stress of her grief anymore after losing her brother, after losing Vision. And I think that that's supported by what Rebecca says. I think that lays that out as, correct. That's how this started, and that's what it's about, and that's what she's going through inside the hex. Just trying to push down her grief and assuage her grief by creating and maintaining this fantasy world as best she can. Something interesting happens here too. The sword doctor tells Rebecca, this imaging that we did of you, we have to do it again. It came back blank. So I guess they did x-rays or whatever, maybe her head or her skeletal system to see if she's okay. And they came up blank. And then she also points out that the blood tests came up like empty and they have to do them again. And Rebecca says, no, I don't have time for that. I'm not going to do them again. So they don't do them again. But what does that mean? Why did all that stuff come up empty and blank? Is that something to do with having been in the hex? Is that something to do with the fact that she's going to turn out to be Captain Marvel? I don't know, but it came up and it was interesting. Because of all of this that's just happened with Rebecca, there's no denying now that Wanda is doing this. So SWORD is aware now, as is the FBI and everybody else, that this is something that Wanda has done, not something that's being done to her. In fact, one of the guys, I think he's with the FBI, is one of the higher ups, shows Rebecca a tape of Wanda literally stealing Vision's corpse and reanimating him, which we didn't know had happened before. And that goes to another thing I've been wondering since the beginning. Is Vision actually back from the dead, or is the Vision that she's interacting with in the hex, in her fantasy, a construct, just like the kids are a construct? We now know it's actually him back from the dead. The weird thing is he doesn't seem to have all his memories. But I'm glad that it's him back from the dead, because that's going to make the story more interesting versus if he had just been some kind of construct that she created out of nothing to sort of, represent him. So they know it's her. What I don't know is, why don't they know that Scarlet Witch is her like code name or her superhero name? Because they're talking about, does she have another name? Is it just Wanda? How come she doesn't have a code name? And they're like, oh, we don't know, but she does. It's Scarlet Witch. I wonder why they didn't use that. But anyway. And then at another point, back in the hex, Wanda actually does magic right in front of Agnes. Earlier, it was magic sort of occurred right in front of her that sort of defied reality, and Agnes didn't notice, or if she did, of course, didn't say anything. But now she does magic right in front of Agnes, and Vision kind of questions this. And Wanda's like, oh, she probably didn't notice. She didn't notice when the kids aged up automatically. So they just blow it off. But Vision, is just obviously uncomfortable and sort of noticing that stuff's going on, that Wanda is acting strangely. Um, not even within the rules of her own construct, where, okay, we're supposed to maintain a low profile, but now I'm just going to do magic in front of Agnes. So is this a symbol that she's sort of slipping, that the butter is slipping off the noodle, as they say, or off the biscuit? But this is part of why I believed all along that, well, I shouldn't say believed. This is part of why I wondered all along whether Vision was actually Vision, because again, he seems independent of her. He seems to have autonomy. So it just wasn't confirmed, in the narrative up until this episode. But he very much is his own entity, and he's starting to notice, and he's not comfortable with it. And things sort of come to a head. But that's happened before, and Wanda just sort of fast forwards or rewinds and has a do-over because she can control the universe if she wants to. But I think that's only going to work for so long. Speaking of autonomous, it turns out the kids are actually autonomous. They have their own consciousness. They have sentience within them, because they were able to age up on their own. When they first aged up, we didn't know if it was just something that happened or if they did it. We still don't know. But at one point, they choose to age up from about 8 to like 10 or 11, like right in front of Vision and Wanda. And she's like, no, don't do it, but they do it anyway. So it's, again, one of those things that she's not in control of. She created these beings out of her own power. She made that decision. She did that of her own free will. But now they're autonomous. So it goes back to what I was saying before. She created this hex, but not everything in it is under her direct control or her conscious control. So it's very complicated, and I can't wait for them to reveal more about what exactly she's controlling and what she isn't controlling, and so forth. Then we flash back over to S.W.O.R.D., and they're talking more about Wanda and her powers, and the FBI guy says, oh, well, she's not as strong as Captain Marvel or something like that. And when Rebecca hears this, she just like brushes off any mention of Captain Marvel and moves right away from that subject, which I thought was interesting. The next cool thing is that and I didn't think they would deal with this directly, but they did directly deal with what's up with the clothes inside the hex. They look at Rebecca's clothes. They actually fire a gun at her clothes and reveal that the clothing she was wearing, which was like 70s looking clothes, 1970s clothing, by looking at it, was really just her original outfit rearranged on the molecular level, because part of it's Kevlar, which comes from the Kevlar vest she was wearing. So it goes back to something I was saying in a previous video, that what Wanda is doing in quote unquote Westview includes, among whatever else she's doing, among all the other things she's doing, includes manipulating matter, and changing things on the molecular level, whether that's conscious or whether it's part of a subconscious routine that's going on in the background of her mind. As long as these powers are being manifested, we don't know, but she is manipulating matter at the molecular level. And I think it's cool that they came right out and said that. And this is a fact that may, play out more significantly as the season goes on. But we'll see. Then there's a scene where Vision is at work, and I thought this was a consequential scene. They're sort of going over how the new computer system works and, what email is. And the email gets read aloud by like a voiceover. And it's referencing events in the real world, like what S.W.O.R.D. is trying to do to get through into the hex and deal with it. And so Vision starts to kind of freak out. And he's having a conversation with the coworker because he's kind of frustrated, like, this is not real. There's something going on. And the coworker doesn't understand. So he like touches him on the temple and kind of does like a Vulcan mind meld thing. And for a few seconds, the coworker snaps out of it and is able to, break character and say, oh my God, I got to get my phone. I've got to call my wife. What's going on? This is terrible. None of this is real, he says. And so Vision's kind of taken aback because Vision's been noticing this as well. But the fact that someone else is sort of breaking character in front of him The second person to do it in the same, like, quote unquote day, is significant to him, and it's significant to us as the audience. But then the guy snaps back into it. So there again, it goes to what I've been talking about for a couple of videos now. These are real people, not constructs, and Wanda is literally controlling them. But her control is not absolute. It can be broken, and it can break on its own, apparently, as evidenced by Agnes. So I think that's all super interesting, and I can't wait to see where all of this goes. I know I keep saying that, but they've got a lot of irons in the fire, and we're going to see all of them, or most of them, sort of, down the road come to fruition and reveal, just what the hell is going on across a whole spectrum of criteria. And I'm just very excited by that eventual reveal of all those aspects of what's happening. So then we go back into the hex, and Wanda's children ask her, did she have any siblings? And she talks about her brother and says that he's far away, that of course being Quicksilver or Pietra. So I thought it was interesting because, every time the brother's brought up, or had been brought up previously, I guess it was only the once, she kind of like pushed it away and shoved it away and didn't want to talk about it because it was painful. But here she kind of, because she's talking to the kids, she kind of seems to be less upset by it. Is sort of, rolling with it and living in the moment of remembering him. And, I thought that was telling, that she's fluctuating back and forth between how she's able to handle references to or memories of her brother. Then we see that Sword has sent in a drone from the 80s, I guess. Rebecca had the idea of sending in an old drone so that it wouldn't need to be reorganized by Wanda's mind or the hex or whatever is reorganizing, matter to fit into the environment, so that it wouldn't, change into a pineapple or something, because it already fit in the era. So, and of course, Wanda doesn't realize it's there right away until it gets close. So again, she's not omniscient, but she is in control. It's so weird. But then she grabs a hold of the drone, or gets a hold of the drone, and walks it out of the hex and confronts Sword in a very tense and powerful and frankly frightening scene. She is very terrifying to me. She just is not going to take any shit, and is determined to maintain her fantasy world. And her reason, of course, is that otherwise she'd be in great grief. But they don't really know that. I mean, they might be sort of assuming it. I don't think they've really said that they're sort of leaning towards that as her reason. But yeah, she's terrifying, and don't mess with Wanda. And then she goes back into the hex. Whereupon we find that the dog is missing. They had a puppy. They adopted a puppy. The kids did earlier, and the puppy dies, and they want her to bring it back, but she won't. And she explains to them, when things live, things die, and you don't bring them back. It's the way of things. But we know she's brought Vision back to life. So it goes to that, it is like a duality. It's kind of like Spock in Star Trek. She has a duality. She realizes that things are supposed to be a certain way on one hand, but on the other hand, she just changes things to be the way she wants them to be. And it's like an inner battle is going on between, parts of herself, where she, is living in the world as it is, and obeying sort of the rules of how the universe is supposed to be, even though she can change them. But then on the other hand, not. On the other hand, she's changing things. So it's very interesting to see this sort of dichotomy that's going on within her, and that is being manifested in her actions. So that was, a cool moment. Vision once again confronts Wanda after all of this, because he's just had it at this point. He knows that she's lying to him. He knows that there's a deception. He knows that he can't remember his past. He's wicked upset. They kind of almost like get into a fisticuffs, or in their case, a meta off, or whatever, you know, a superhero off, where they both sort of like levitate and she's about to shoot a ball at him or whatever, and they sort of stand down from that. But you know, he confronts her and they're having a conversation like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm not doing anything. And you have to wonder in that moment, is she lying, or does she really believe she's not doing things? Because we know she knows she's doing things. We know that she cast Rebecca out of the hex of her own free will. But is that just one part of her? Is she switching back between parts? One part that knows what's going on and one part that doesn't, because the other part's keeping it ignorant. So it's going to be very interesting when this all comes out. But just as they're having this conversation, the doorbell rings and she's like, I didn't do that. And she either did and doesn't know that she did, or she did and she's lying, or she didn't really do it. And the universe that she's created is manifesting things on its own. We're going to find out, but it's very freaky. But of course, she opens the door, and who's at the door but Quicksilver, Pietro, to her huge, enormous shock, at least seemingly, at least to one part of her consciousness. And it's a shock to the audience as well, because it's the Sony, you know, version of Quicksilver. It's not the actor that played the part in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that was really strange. I wonder why that is. I don't know if the original guy from the MCU who played Quicksilver wasn't available, but for whatever reason, they went with the other Quicksilver that we've seen in live action to play him in this. So that'll be interesting if they even mention that he's different. But yeah, that's pretty much where the episode ends. And I'm just finding it extremely fascinating because, as I said before, she's clearly experiencing, there's clearly a duality within her. There's clearly a dichotomy within her. There's clearly a battle going on, or at least a separation between her conscious and her subconscious. And there's clearly a combination of, you know, sort of acting a certain way, you know, and which goes along with repressing a certain realities. And there's another aspect of it that's not that. That's just living in the moment because she believes it. I just cannot wait to see how they pan this all out or play it all out. We're more than halfway through now, right? This is episode 5, so there are only 4 more left. And I just can't wait to see the episode next week. I think it's awesome. That's really all I have to say about this episode. I wish I didn't have to wait a week to see another one, but we all do. Between now and then, we're going to have Batgirl on Sunday. I will do a review of that as well. But until then, I'm out of here. So I'm going to say, once again, peace and long life.